Okay, so we did the Walnut Hills Cemetery, and I'm Elise.
I'm Jonathan.
I'm Zaire.
And Brianna.
So, starting with the history of the Walnut Hills Cemetery, it opened in 1843 as the second German Protestant cemetery, and there was a lot of German people in the cemetery going around. Most of the names were German. And it was originally 5 acres, and now it's 70. The first burials took place on June 30th, 1843, and that was 176 years ago. The cemetery currently has over 50,000 burials, and every year it holds a Run Like Hell 5K for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And on September 25th, 1941, the second German Protestant cemetery was renamed to Walnut Hills to distinguish itself and reduce confusion between it and the first German Protestant cemetery.
In the cemetery, there wasn't really any famous people buried there, but we did find a lot of veterans graves, so we decided to use them as our notable burials.
Some of the symbols that we saw a lot was the laurel or the wreath. Does anyone else wreath? My bad. And this symbol represents victory, eternity, and chastity, and all those things. They represent. They are used to be represented. No, they are represented by the leaves that do not wilt or fade, and by ancient contests where the victors were awarded with a laurel wreath that was supposed to be given to them to represent their immortality.
Another tombstone we found were the tree stones. The tree stones, it's a grave that looks like a tree, a stump or a log, and they are used to symbolize a love of nature and the environment.
Another kind was the weeping willow. The weeping willow represents grief, sorrow, and immortality. While grief and sorrow seem to make sense with the weeping willow, the immortality may seem a little strange. The immortality is based off of Christianity and the gospel of Christ because the weeping willow will flourish no matter how many of its branches are cut off.
The lamb is another symbol. It's a headstone with a lamb on it usually marks the graves of children or infants, and this is because Christ is depicted as a shepherd and is also referred to as the Lamb of God.
Another symbol that we saw was the falcon and the hawk. This symbolizes warlike actions, or it was converted. The pagan converted to Christianity. And a pagan is a person who held religious beliefs other than main world religions.
Another symbol we found was the eagle. It's symbolic in many reasons. The first is that it's a representation of the United States. In this specific image, it's an eagle with an American flag on the gravestone for a veteran. And it also can represent resurrection and rebirth. Eagles were believed to fly towards the sun until their feathers burned off and then plunge to the waters below to be rejuvenated. And it can also represent generosity because eagles often leave some of its prey behind for other animals.
Hope. This is a statue of one of the 7 virtues represented in human form. Hope is depicted as a statue of a lady looking upwards.
The hands together, 2 hands together, or 2 hands look like they are shaking, are a symbol for matrimony or marriage, and they're usually the clothing around one hand is made to look feminine, and the other hand masculine to symbolize the marriage. And if there are sleeves that are gender neutral, it usually represents a heavenly welcome or an earthly farewell.
Another symbol is a sphere or a ball, and it's usually purely decorative, but it can also represent a veteran's grave, and if it has 3 balls, then it usually represents gifts or the amount of money that they have.
Another symbol we found was the open book. An open book is used to register the name of the deceased. It's often compared to a human heart with its thoughts and feelings open to the world and to God.
Another is a cross with a crown, and this is a Christian symbol representing the sovereignty of the Lord. The crown also stands for the victory, and the cross stands for Christianity. It also may denote that this person was a member of the Yorkite Masons, and the symbol represents power, authority, and to lead and command.
The lamp is a symbol of wisdom, faithfulness, and holiness. It is also a symbol for God.
This symbol is lyre. Lyre. I suck at this. Lyre. It is depicted as a more playful version of the harp, and is also a representation of harmony.
Another symbol we found were arrows. Arrows, a symbol of involvement in the military. It also may represent the plague.
A broken column represents a life cut short and was a popular mortality symbol in the 19th century.
A draped urn. The draped urn is a common 19th century symbol. The drape is usually seen as a symbol of the veil between earth and the heavens, or it is seen as a reverential accessory. And cremation was not popular during those times, but the urn was still used as a decoration. This was one of the most common symbols we found throughout Walnut Hills.
We also saw the Star of David. It is a Jewish symbol, as we mentioned earlier. It was a symbol of divine protection. It was only a minor symbol until Hitler ordered Jews to wear the symbol on their arm. The final part of his rise to becoming a major Jewish symbol was when Israel placed the star on their flag.
The other common symbol we found was the Latin cross. The Latin cross represents Christianity and Jesus.
The Freemasons and / Masons were these were actually really common around the cemetery. I saw a lot of these, and they're represented by a square and a compass and the letter M. It also may contain the letter G inside, the symbol standing for God or geometry. The square and the compass represent the interaction of mind and matter, and a progression from the material to the intellectual to the spirit world.
Shriners. Shriners is the name for the imperial council of the ancient Arabic order of the nobles of the mystic shrine. And the symbol contains a scimitar, which is a type of sword that hangs a crescent and a 5-pointed star.
This is an this symbol, either way, is an ancient Egyptian symbol of life. I only saw one of these in the entire cemetery, which was very interesting. And now it's actually used currently in modern times by Coptic Egyptians or Egyptians who are Christians as a form of a cross. And yeah, so I only found one headstone of this symbol in the entire cemetery, which was interesting.
Another one we found was the pentagram. It was used by magicians and sorcerers. It was believed to offer protection against evil. Christianity later used this figure to symbolize the 5 wounds suffered by Christ on the cross.
The next was the obelisk, as other people mentioned, and it's styled after an ancient Egyptian structure. It may symbolize a god, the achievements of the person, or just be purely decorative, which most likely most of these were purely decorative. It also may serve as a representation of the relationship between earth and the heavens, with it pointing to the sky.
IHS is a Christogram monogram symbolizing Jesus Christ. It represents the first 3 letters in the Greek name for Jesus, and it is most popularly used in the early 20th century and first appeared in the 1760s.
Another symbol that we found was the vase. It is usually common. It's commonly used for ancient burial and memorial art, and it also symbolizes death and mourning.
We also found heart-shaped headstones. It's a symbol of charity or the Sacred Heart of Christ. There are hearts that can appear pierced, held in the hands, or crowned. 2 hearts can often be used to symbolize love and a marriage.
And as you can see, this one says mutter, so someone's mother, because it's a German. An owl, so I saw a lot of these actually, and these symbolize wisdom, intelligence, wise elders, and scholars. And most of the owls that I saw were on like huge, like big structures, and they were like kind of little patterns engraved into the side. They were very interesting.
Another thing we saw was the horse and horseshoe. The horse represents courage and generosity. The horseshoe represents good luck and protection against evil. And a hammer represents power of creation.
We also saw flowers and stars on the gravestones. The flower represents frailty of life, while the stars represent the spirit pursuing through darkness, spiritual descent into heaven, and symbolizes the life of Christ as well.
Others we found were like the tree trunks, like I mentioned before, and a scroll of oak leaves. The tree trunk symbolizes cutting off of life and brevity of life. Oak leaves represent power, authority, and victory, and the scroll represents life and time, honor, and commemoration.
The heart with the anchor and the cross, I saw these on quite a few of them. These represent faith, hope, and charity.
And this is our references.
Yeah.